Hello and welcome to our second crack at this podcast, which now has a name. We're going for Outside the Therapy Room. So thank you for joining us. I'm Lucy, one of the clinical directors at Hello Self.
And I'm Duncan, another clinical director. So we've got a list of topics that we've been reflecting on over the course of the last couple of weeks that we're just going to make our way through, which hopefully will be of interest and will resonate with you.
I can see you put something there about first world problems. Talk me through what you were thinking about when you put that.
Yeah, so that was about kind of just stress, I think. So just talking about stress in general. So because I definitely have the belief and that I operate better under a certain level of stress. I think cognitively, just in terms of just physically, and I wouldn't say I'm a disciple of Wim Hof, but I don't know if you heard, I follow a bit of the Wim Hof method, and
Yeah.
I really the evidence base that's there about the importance of us having a degree of environmental stress that boosts our immune system, our circulatory function, our brain capacity. So
Yeah.
like, so I set myself challenges, and I kind of I just naturally take on stuff. So I experience quite a bit of stress. At the same time, there are times when my stress bucket is full, and I move out of that window of tolerance to clearly being overwhelmed by stress. Yeah, was just reflecting. I think a couple of days this week, I've had that experience where I've gone over the that
Mm.
optimal level of stress into the too much stress. And I was thinking about that, and the way I tell, like, it's usually at the end of the day, but like if my stress bucket is full and I've kind of overwhelmed it, then I'm more snappy, I'm more irritable, I shout more at the kids,
Yeah.
I just I'm slowed, I can't think. There's probably more faffing and kind of ruminating, and I'm cognitively slowed in many ways. But so the other day I was, and then when I reflect, I found myself. I've started to use that caveat. Of course, this is just first world problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've noticed that coming into our language more. I speak to a lot
Mhm.
of people, and they usually kind of say that caveat. Oh, but these are just first world problems, and I quite like it because for me it's just a statement that reminds me to keep things in perspective and just to remember that there are people in a lot worse situation than me, and I'm very fortunate, and the stresses that I'm talking about are fortunate stresses in many ways. So, but then at the same time, that balance of actually, but our stress is all relative, isn't it? We live in our own problems
In the first world,
in
period.
the first world.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we can't kind of invalidate the fact that these are real life problems. So, but
Yeah.
for me, it's just that balance of a phrase that I've noticed more, and then I found myself starting to use, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But in terms of that stress, that relates to one of my lows. So I'll perhaps use that example of when I had a day where my I felt too stressed,
Yeah.
and that resulted in one of my lows. But yeah, um, that's what I guess I was
Yeah.
reflecting there. Do you find that?
Definitely. I reached my limit, and but I also would say that the stress bucket, as you called it, I think it has a different capacity at different times.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think I think some days probably the stress level isn't necessarily. There are days when I can cope with a certain level of stress, and other days the same level of stress I can't cope with.
Yeah,
I find hard, more readily overwhelmed by.
yeah,
Um, and I think I'm like you. I mean, I definitely thrive off a bit of pressure and stress to motivate. I think that's what the research shows us. We
mm,
need a bit of that
mm,
there. And I definitely view, try to more often than not view pressure as challenge
yeah,
rather than threat.
yeah,
Um, and uh, Sorry, I'm now slightly distracted because a really wet dog has just jumped on my lap. She's just got back from her walk and has like powered in through the door and
You
leapt on
nearly
her.
got away with that being really smooth then.
It was the wetness that was really distracting, more so than just anyway. I didn't. There was a good example of not managing the stress. But I think I'm just the same as you. That what I'll notice is being a bit more snappy, being slightly more sort of forgetful,
Yeah,
faffy,
yeah.
suddenly feeling that I'm a pretty good multitasker, but suddenly feeling that it's impossible to do anything more than one thing at once. Um, uh, but I wonder if, just thinking a little bit about what we were talking to producer James about earlier, is about thinking about stress in relation to January as well
Yeah.
and post Christmas. And Christmas is such a bizarre time of year, isn't it?
Mm,
Where obviously, depending on people's cultures and families and faiths, so many different things influence that time. But generally, it is a period of time, at least, where people aren't at work
yeah.
and people are spending potentially more time with family or friends. And I think that comes with one side of a real pleasure and joy for some and many, I hope, but equally it's stressful hosting lots of people, or
Mm,
financially it's quite a big pressure, buying all your presents and all your food. So there's sort of a whole load of stuff. If you can get into January and there's a relief,
mm,
that you've sort of done this period of time that's stressful and pressured, and that you really want to do right. You
mm,
want people to have a lovely time and feel welcomed and
mm,
looked after, um, and a sense of togetherness. And sometimes that'll work, and sometimes it won't. So I think I often feel a kind of relief. We've hit
mm,
January; it's done. Also, relief of getting through New Year's Eve. Like, I'm a big fan of a party and fun, but New Year's Eve has almost slightly become a endurance test. Like, you've got to stay up, whatever's happening.
yeah.
Um, um, Yet we know that actually, having got past Christmas and January being a long month to being paid, the sort of aftermath of what has hopefully been quite a nice period of time off, and the darkness that people commonly feel not brilliant in
Mm,
January.
those
And I
kind
sort
of
of wonder when that shift happens, or
mm,
if it's really different
mm,
for everyone.
those January blues as are
Yeah.
reflected. What I was going to ask when I was listening to you say that, that what do you think it is about? Um, is part of it that kind of getting back into a bit of a routine and kind of some sense of normality that kind of leads to that feeling of relief, or do you think for you it's more that's done, that took an awful lot of kind of energy and really the pressure of, I think, because I noticed that, and I've talked to quite a few people that have had that experience as well, both in and outside the therapy room, of feeling the pressure of this is time off. I really need to invest it in my family and friends and make it worth
Yeah.
it. And inevitably, it doesn't always go to plan, and
Yeah.
families don't. Yeah, kind of family dramas happen, and sometimes just getting back into that normality of a routine is the relief in itself.
I agree, and even the normality of when you eat and what you eat to some, and I've just lived
Normal
on
stuff.
cheese and chocolate and pigs and blankets or whatever they're called for about a month. I mean, which I love, but equally, there's just sort of something different. But I think for me, it's probably a bit of both. I think there's something about getting back to a routine, and I feel quite excited at the start of January, and I do. I'm not a mega resolution setter. I kind of feel a bit like I review more regularly
Mm,
my what's important and my goals than just a once a year thing. And I think if if I think about it as a resolution, I think I just do the same things that everyone does. Something around diet, something around exercise. It
mm,
sort of feels a bit
mm,
just sort of what society wants you to say and do. So I don't tend to get too caught up in that, but I do feel sort of really excited about what that year might hold and what I might like to do and what other people might like to do. So I definitely tend to feel quite sort of positive, I think, at the start of January. But I was just thinking as well, though, I mean, we started today when we met with James, how's your Christmas?
Mm,
There's such a pressure on that period. We don't we don't always ask about a half term or
mm,
a summer break in the same way. I mean, Christmas has such a pressure on it to be good.
mm,
And actually, I found it really difficult because actually a good friend died on Christmas Eve.
mm.
And I know I've
No.
talked to you about it, Duncan, but that sort of blows quite a lot of, it makes it very difficult to then, because actually I did have some lovely, lovely moments over
Yeah,
Christmas with family, but equally some incredibly sad moments. And I'm sure lots of people, for all different reasons, have sad and difficult
for sure.
bits. But do you know what? I think it makes me feel a bit guilty when people ask me that question of how's your Christmas. I think I feel bad if I can't just say it was great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People, like you say, you almost feel that yeah, you can't say that. Otherwise, you failed in a way at the Christmas experience.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
So it is. So I wonder sort of what societal pressure around what Christmas sort of should be,
mm,
how that might impact on how people also feel in January, because you're meant to have had a great time. You're meant to be feeling fired up, and actually, maybe for all sorts of reasons, people don't.
yeah.
It must be the weather as well. I mean, the sparkly lights. I mean, I'm just a big. When we took down our Christmas tree, I said to my children, "Could we just put it up in the spare room and have a secret Christmas room that is Christmas all year round?
Yeah.
You can just sneak in there if you want a bit of Christmas vibe, because I love the lights and the sort of sparkly magic feel. And of course, with January, we also take that away,
Yeah.
and it's just dark
Yes.
without sparkly lights,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that sort of the feelings that might come with anticipation or excitement of time with people.
Yeah. It's a depressing experience taking down the Christmas lights and decorations. You just have to endure it, don't you? Just have to push through it.
I want to go back, if it's all right, just to the January blues thing. I was thinking about children in
Yeah.
relation to that, and whether so I just try. I'm only thinking about it now. I don't think I've observed a sort of January blues um, presence in my children. I'm not sure if I ever have,
No.
and I wonder if it is something that's more an adult and therefore a sort of adult social construct
Yeah.
somehow, or not.
Yeah.
How are your kids about returning to routine and life and facing January?
Oh, there's just amazing ability to just adapt and what
Yeah.
they do. Just get on with things, don't they? Just so.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I think if you look at a portrayal of resilience, it is in children, isn't it? They typify that bouncing back and surviving and enduring and obviously as you know as I see in the work that I do therapeutically with complex trauma, just amazes me the resilience that children do portray in surviving the most horrendous, adverse, traumatic experiences. So I see adaptability, and sometimes wish I could be that adaptable. But again, for me, that is resilience, isn't it? Children live in as much as they can if the environment isn't too dangerous in the present. That don't have to. They're in the present. Curious. Not more often than not caught up in kind of worrying about what's coming or worrying about what's been. Obviously, that can happen, but and that is the essence. I think if that's yeah, it's certainly a kind of qualities that I look at in my kids, and I think, wow, I need to do more of that and be more present and thinking about children. You kind of encouraging me to reflect on how my children seem and how they be, which leads to one of the other topics that I've got down on the list about parenting, and I'd like to check out with you if you feel this way as well. But I mean, this is an ongoing. I think this is a perpetual issue for me, and probably a perpetual issue as a parent. But that just feeling constantly feeling like you're not doing enough, like not a good enough parent. I feel that quite a lot of the time, and feeling, you know, because both me and my wife, busy full-time working parents, trying to manage the demands of busy work,
Mm.
as well as invest as much attention, love, time as we can in our children, and always feeling, I need to be giving them some more attention. They're not getting enough attention. They're not getting enough of our time, and the feelings of guilt and that accompany that. But I think I've been able to kind of notice those feelings, step back, and just try and reflect and think about it a bit more. And had a few conversations with my wife about it. And I had this kind of reflection the other day, trying to think in a different way from those old ways of feeling in terms of that guilt is actually like no wonder I feel that way, because it's we've just moved. We haven't yet really established a community of kind of friends and neighbours around us. Uh, neither of us have extended family that can consistently really kind of help out practically or emotionally, and just that dawned on me, that really important phrase: it takes a village, it takes a community to raise a child. And it really does, and we can't give them all the attention, all the love, all the time that they need, because they need wider family, they need friends around them to give that, parents of other friends, neighbours and community, because no two parents, or hats off to any a single parent kind of trying to meet that demand as well. You need, your children need more than just you as parents, don't they? And I just wondered if you feel that way, and also if you feel you have a good sense of a good community and kind of network that you utilize and kind of call upon to help you raise your children.
Yeah, I think that, like, yes. So firstly, I should say I completely agree with you, and if it's of any comfort, even with family and friends and a community and a network and living in a place where I've lived for a long time,
Yeah,
I still feel guilty about not being a good enough parent and not being
yeah,
everything all of the time.
yeah,
So I fear, Duncan, that feeling may remain with you even
yes.
when you've built
I've kind of
what you
accepted
have
that.
there.
Yeah,
But of course, it's going to be emphasised by not having that. I mean, I'm lucky. I have family in London, but not family who not. I don't have childcare help per
yeah,
se, as it were, from my family, but my family are very much part of my and their life. So
yeah,
they have that. They have other people who are different and bring different conversation, and so that's good. And then yes, friends and clubs that kids go to and opportunities, and we do live in an area that has all that. And I would agree, and absolutely draw on all those things, and particularly our your middle one, my elder one, they're of an age point where they're building their own communities and
yeah,
connections, and
yeah,
my daughter's much ever increasingly independent, and seeking out those things for herself, which is
yeah.
good. So she's filling in some of
Gaps.
those gaps as well in her own way, and
Yeah,
making her choices about who fills them in rather than me filling someone else into them,
yeah,
which is really nice. My son, certain days a week he has to go to after school wraparound care because I'm working, whereas my daughter doesn't. She can do whatever she wants to do because
yeah.
of the age she is, and I think that does make a difference. um, I think we're always going to feel,
I know.
on the one hand, we know we cannot be everything
No.
and all the time. When you're doing one thing, by default you are not doing every other thing in the world
Mm,
that you could be doing instead
yeah,
of that. And I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, and um, but the father works, and the wife had gone away. She doesn't work, and he was looking after the children for a week while she was going off for a week with friends, and uh, he was sort of reporting back on the end of the week and saying just how difficult it was, and particularly sort of referring to cognitive load and all the different little things that have to be remembered and thought about for children every day. And he said, next time, my learning from this is next time I'll just take some annual leave
yeah,
from work in order to look after my children for that week.
yeah,
And they're in a position where the wife doesn't normally
yeah,
work.
yeah.
But I just thought, so many of us, you, us,
Mm,
we all work, so we don't have that other person who does it, or we can't say, and yeah, I do have moments when I think maybe we've got it wrong. There we were. We all need to work. Women need to work, and I agree, women need to work. But I think with most, we've got two adults trying to do three full time jobs,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
and that's too many jobs between.
The maths doesn't add up, does it?
It doesn't add up. And I know we've fought for so long to have this, but I think somehow the fight was not quite right.
Yeah. No. Parenting is a full-time job for sure, and I think makes me empathise with our associates. Like often, the holiday periods are probably time where they are trying to do perhaps a bit more work for us to in different ways. Some of our associates to kind of and so puts that pressure on them for all those reasons as well. So yeah, I mean that's a challenge. That's when it all kind of you feel it even more when you're trying to balance. You're trying to work through the holidays from home with your children being off. I mean that yeah, that's when it's even more apparent.
But I think you just touching on speaking about Hello Self Associates, then just, thinking about the work that they do, the Hello Self clients, and I like the fact that this can be a bit of working with Hello Self can be work for people where they can put in
Yeah,
some boundaries
yeah,
that perhaps they can't so readily in other roles,
yeah,
within NHS or other, that
yeah,
sort of tend to creep out more. And and I'm mindful, as we grow as an organisation, our referrals grow, and we do go cap in hand to associates saying, "Oh, I've got a client that that you'd be really grateful,
yeah.
have you by any chance got space?" And it's that dance that I often feel I'm doing
Mm,
between wanting to help a client, wanting to, support the onward, growth and expansion of the business, because as we do that, we can help more people,
yeah,
we can
yeah,
develop more things, but equally, really feeling mindful of the importance of respecting the boundaries of people who choose to have part of their practice with Hello
yeah.
Self.
100%.
Um, and and I think that's um, I put my hat. I definitely go cap in hand to people and ask them, and I certainly hope people would always feel they could say no,
Yeah,
and always make that clear. But it does feel quite a dance.
yeah, and I think that's why I'm always grateful for any feedback that helps to kind of understand that line and are we getting it right and are we kind of doing that dance in a tuned and responsive way. Yeah, and I think um, yeah, well, the more feedback we get, um, the better, and absolutely just always trying to give that expectation that please say no, don't there's no pressure to take on this case. We are literally offering it to you because you're a great match, and
Yeah,
potentially we know that sometimes there is some hidden availability but informal availability where someone hasn't yet put their
yeah,
appointment times
yeah,
on, and
yeah,
but that's yeah, I think that there's just that protecting those boundaries around kind of people's our associates when they work when they're working, and protecting that is so important. And I think we were talking a bit about this podcast, and what we're trying to do, and it really is just inviting our associates to join us in protecting some time to connect with someone else and reflect about life outside the therapy room, and to encourage, or just the experience of doing that for me is really valuable, but encouraging our associates to do that as well. And but I think on that point of are we getting it right, what is it like as an associate working for Hello Self? I mean, we've both done it before becoming clinical directors, but just a kind of honest and transparent insight into life as an associate. So we both kind of wanted to invite an associate into our next podcast, and just
yeah,
interview them and just find out to have a good kind of chat about the
Yeah.
experience, and ask them some of those questions, like, do you, do you feel there's a pressure or expectations to give more? How do you experience that demand? Do you feel appreciated? Do you feel valued? Do you feel like we've got your back? Because for me, fundamentally, that's the most important part of my job is to try to ensure that our associates feel we've got their back, and we're there and responsive to provide whatever clinical support we can, when they need it.
Yeah. So drum roll. Not that we're going to say any names yet, but
No,
next session,
yeah,
outside the therapy room, we are going to hopefully have someone join us.
yeah,
Not to. I'm gonna reframe your language. I'm not going to interview them. That sounds a bit
yeah,
hardcore. But have a nice chat
yes, over a cup of tea. Yeah,
about what life at Hello Self is like,
yeah,
and what life is like. What a sort of week is like for them
yeah,
in Hello Self, along with
yeah.
other jobs and other roles and responsibilities, family life.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and one,
just, I'm kind of mindful of time. I guess we need to move to the favourite bit, which is our highs and lows of the week. Are we ready for that?
yeah,
What have you
I'm ready.
got? What have you got on your
Got-
highs, Lucy?
got- I'm going to start with my low because
Okay.
so I was actually first. I'm going to say, since you introduced the highs and lows, my family have got really on board with it,
Awesome.
including my sister and my 18-month-old niece lived with us for a couple of months. And even when she was 16 months when she was here, and when we'd say hi, and she'd put her little hands in the air and just look up and say hi. So that
Love
was
it.
always very
Love
sweet.
it.
So she was a part of it. So I think it's a great little sort of snapshot moment, and I like that being a family thing. My low, do you know what? I've just thought about these this morning. Milo was this morning. I woke up and I'd had a really, really awful nightmare. And I really rarely have awful nightmares. And I woke up, I shall not bore people with it, but bottom line was my dog lost a leg.
Oh,
There was a lot more to it than that, but that was
that's
sort of
lovely.
the moment when I'd woken up. And I felt so distressed
Mm,
that I actually was like, I'm not, I can't, it was earlier than I might normally get up. I was like, nope, don't want to stay lying in bed. Don't want to risk going back to sleep again and going back into that. Don't want to lie here thinking about it. I'm going to get up. I'm going to get in the shower. I'm going to try and wash this
extract.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a real,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the last time something like that happened, but it was a real, oh,
Yeah.
my,
Yeah.
I did wake in the night and read a few chapters of, I'm reading a book at the minute. What is it called? The Devil You Know, which is by
Okay.
a forensic psychiatrist. When
I bought that book actually. I haven't read it yet. Is it any good?
yeah, I actually had a history of working in forensic stuff,
Right.
working in forensics rather than my own forensic history. I
Yeah.
hasten to add. But so I've always been quite interested in that sort of stuff. Do you know, I really like. It's good. It's interesting. Very much talking about the therapeutic relationship and some of the, I won't bang on about it now, but it's really made me think about the art as well as the science
Yeah.
of therapy
Yeah.
and of communication. And I think we get quite focused on the science
Yeah.
practitioners, and I think it's nice to actually sort of spread out and think a bit more about the art of
Mm,
it. Anyway, I had read a bit of that in the night, and I
yeah.
could see that had fed into some of the things that were happening in my dreams. So that's probably partly my own fault. But that was definitely my low.
Yeah.
That and my high was for my daughter's birthday present because she's a very adventurous soul. I bought her um, introduction to scuba diving course. Neither of us had ever scuba doved. Don't know what it is. But last weekend we went scuba diving together
Amazing.
and learnt how to do it, and it was really thrilling and lovely. She just took to it like a duck to water, which was lovely, and uh, I loved sitting down at the bottom of this pool that you're doing it in, and the sort of peace and
Yeah.
tranquility. Yes, you've got the bubbles coming up, but you're still communicating with everyone through all your different, you know,
Yeah.
hand gestures and things. So there's communication, but there's this real peace, and you're so focused on, am I staying alive and is my child staying alive, that you don't worry about
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was my high. It was
Wow,
really,
what
really
a different thing to do. And
yeah, lovely.
talking of, being having to be in the present moment, I can't think of a better way to do that.
Definitely, I recommend it.
Yeah. So my,
What
so
about you?
yeah, I'll start with my low as well. So I've kind of mentioned earlier. So it typifies those days where I just kind of overwhelmed by stress. So I me and my son playing a brass band in the Lake District. So I've always
Oh,
played
how lovely.
a cornet, and really stressful day. We're trying to sell a house. We've just moved into to a house. Just a busy day with work, lots of stuff. Kids going on with school, trying to get dinner done, rushing out the door. Managed to get him out. We're probably 5-10 minutes late. Get out the door. We drive. It's 35 minutes to the band practice. Drive
Yeah,
there. Really foggy night. Like not a pleasant drive. Get there. Park up. Getting out of the car. My son gets his instrument, and I'm like, oh no, I've left my instrument and the music at home. 35-minute drive away. And it's just that. Oh, where did it all go so wrong?
heart sink moment. Yeah.
Exactly, and just feeling so cognitively slowed, I'm just standing there, and my son's like, "Are you right, Dad?" Well, I'm just trying to think, what am I going to do here? So I'm like, "Right, son, you're going to have to go in. You just do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna drive all the way back, get it, come back." So I did that, and I was really looking forward to just, kind of having a practice and just playing some
Yeah.
music. So that was a low
Oh,
point for
that's
sure
gutting.
for me.
Yeah, that is a low.
And then a high was similar to yours, actually. I suppose my New Year's resolution, in the sense, more again just a constant thing, but just trying to reinforce it. The importance of it is just trying to book in some more family activities, and
Lovely.
some things that we have planned in that we can look forward to,
Yeah.
but also the things that we can do as a family as the kids are growing. So one of the things we've decided on, living where we do in the Lake District, is to over the next few years we want to try and climb or walk up all the mountains in the UK. So
Oh, wow.
so we're kind of all geared up in our walking boots and waterproofs, and we've planned a couple of mountains that we're going to do later in the year. But we did the first one this weekend, which I don't even think you can call it a mountain. It's more like a hump. It's about 350 meters above sea level, just a kind of half an hour away, just over. But it's a beautiful scene. So we all walked up together, looking out over Morecambe Bay and the kind of estuary around
Yeah.
the northwest, and just we all afterwards we all really enjoyed it. It was just nice to just be out in the outdoors, just kind of spending
Yeah.
some good time together. So that was definitely my high. I kind of really appreciated that and enjoyed it.
That's really lovely. And it's interesting, isn't it, that both of our highs, yes, they're activities, but they're also sort of connecting with nature,
Yeah,
air and
yeah,
mountains and water,
yeah,
and there is just so we know it, and
yeah.
there's so
It
much
was,
about how important
yeah.
those things are to
Shed
being
off
with.
the stress of the
Yeah.
week. Yeah,
So, well, there, there we are. End of number two. Can we beat our viewing numbers for last time? Is the question. But actually, I've really enjoyed talking with you today, Duncan. And so, thank you for us being able to do this. And I am excited by the fact that next time we will, all being well, be talking with an associate
yeah.
joining
I'm
us.
really
So
looking
that
forward to that. That should be good. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.